Welcome to Men and Motors and welcome to my review of this Genesis GV60. Now this is not just any GV60, those nice big bright neon brake calipers will tell you that this is the GV60 Sport Plus. This is the grown-up luxurious sibling of the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. If you're not aware, Genesis is the luxury arm of the Hyundai Group in much the same way as Lexus are the luxury arm of the Toyota Group. This all-wheel drive GV60 comes with 289 miles of range. You can get more range in a GV60 than that, but this being the top spec fast version, more on that in a sec, you do lose a little bit of range as a result. Speaking of that speed, this will do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat. Yeah, 4 seconds. The car's got over 400 brake horsepower on tap, and it's also got a little boost mode that gives you an extra 52 brake horsepower in case 400 knobs simply not enough. And like many Hyundai Group cars, it's no slouch when it comes to charging either. Plug this bad boy into a super fast charger and it will go from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes. That's quite staggering, folks, and really up there with the best in the business at the moment. GV60 Fun is not just a clever number plate, by the way, folks. Do you know this car's got a drift mode? That's right. From the outside, quite a sensible looking car, very luxurious inside, which you'll see in a second. But unlike me, it's able to let its hair down. I mean, it's got a drift mode. Obviously best saved for track use, not one for the rural lanes of Dorset, but there you go, a drift mode. Now, as you might expect, all this doesn't come cheap. The GV60 Sport Plus starts at about 67 grand, and the one we've got here today is just over 75 grand because it's got every option pack possible thrown at it. Now, the boot in the GV60 is not quite as big as the one you'll find in the EV6 or the Ioniq 5, and that's because we've got more of a coupe-like roofline, and the car's actually a tiny bit shorter than those two. Now, despite the fact this is about 100 litres smaller than you would get in those two cars, that's not actually too much of a bad thing because it's a glorious big opening to get things in and out of. Very easy to live with, and you've also got a little bit of space under here for charging cables and the like. You've got a 12 volt socket over there and a really simple, easy to use load cover. To be honest, we don't travel anywhere light, and this would be more than adequate for my family and probably for yours. So the interior of the GV60 is really luxurious. I mean, all the materials in here feel fantastic. You will find a lot of plastic in here. What appears to be metal is quite often plastic, but it's very good quality plastic. In some other Genesis vehicles, quite a lot of the other Genesis vehicles, you will actually find metal in the place of the plastics. So it feels perhaps a tiny bit of a step down from some of the other cars in the Genesis range. It does feel like a huge step up from the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, which both have very nicely put together interiors themselves. The seats in here are absolutely fantastic, massively comfortable, really lovely quality materials, and I challenge anyone not to get entirely 100% comfortable in this car within about 5 seconds. You can adjust just about everything you could possibly ever need to adjust. It's got fantastic lumbar support, lower lumbar support. So for those of you with a few back issues, this thing's going to be an absolute joy to do a long journey in. The steering wheel is super chunky, really nice leather wrapped. You've got plenty of thumb controls. It looks a tad busy, but in actual fact, during the course of normal everyday driving, everything's just in the right place and where it needs to be. Your drive modes are easily accessible from the steering wheel. We've got eco, comfort and sports modes. When you go into sport mode, you'll feel the seat bolsters slightly firm up. And then on this side, we've got boost mode. More about that later. But basically, you press that, you get an extra 52 brake horsepower, and all hell breaks loose. Two very crisp colour displays here. We'll talk about the infotainment system more in a second. As for the driver information display, possibly tip of the hat to Tesla on that one. Certainly the way it displays traffic and your vehicle on the road is something akin to what you might find in a Tesla. Really clear, bright, crisp head-up display for the driver. Onto the infotainment system, it's actually very good. The standard infotainment is surprisingly good. If you're used to the infotainment system in Kia Hyundai vehicles, this one's very, very similar because obviously it comes from the same stable. You'll just find it set out very slightly differently from those other brands. I personally find the menus very easy to navigate. I don't think there's any noticeable lag with anything. All fantastic. What's not so fantastic is we have to use a cable for Apple CarPlay. And you have to plug it in right down here. And that makes no sense. We've got a little wireless charging pad here. And your wireless charging pad, your phone sits in there very nicely and quite discreetly. But it's got this bloody great cable coming out of it because we don't have wireless CarPlay. On a car in 2023 that's really very much a premium car and certainly has a premium price tag, wireless CarPlay should be one of the first things on the list. And it does feel like a little bit of an oversight that it's not. The rest of the stuff we've got here is a nice little storage cubby. We've got your heated and cooled seat controls, heated steering wheel control, all your various surround cameras. Again, you've got heated and cooled seats on the passenger side. You've got this wonderful bit of theatre here, which is the orb. When we turn the car on, magically turns into your drive selector. That's a great piece of kit. You've also got a wheel here if you want to use the navigation system, etc., as you would in something like the BMW iDrive system. So instead of using the touchscreen, you can just use this. I don't. I tend to just go for the touchscreen, but I know a lot of people prefer it the other way. Physical dials here for the radio tuning and for the volume, and then we've got home, menu and back buttons here. So really nicely laid out. Onto the climate controls, and it's a hybrid system, so you've got this super high res, very clear crisp screen, and you've got physical buttons and rocker switches for the temperature. It's one of the best solutions to an aircon system on the market at the moment. Full stop, underlined. You've got the flexibility of having the screen and easy visibility. It looks quite nice and modern, but you've still got physical buttons to make quick changes without having to take your eye off the road. So it really does the job very well indeed. The sound system in this car, it does have the optional innovation pack, which gives you a Bang & Olufsen sound system. It's one of the best sound systems on the market, without doubt. It's absolutely fantastic. If you listen to any kind of music, you've got this amazing separation between the different instruments. There's all the bass you could want. There's plenty of top end without it becoming fizzy. You can control more or less every aspect of the sound. Lots of customization available too. You can also pump in synthetic engine sounds. You can either get exactly that, an engine sound, or you can have something quite futuristic, spaceshipy kind of thing. I don't, because I think they're a little bit naff, but the option's there if you miss it. You've also got a very nice glove box over here, which, as in the EV6 and the Ioniq 5, is actually a drawer rather than a typical glove box. Genius bit of design, that, because normally with a glove box, you open the lid, everything falls out, that's the end of that. Why not just have a drawer? So simple, yet so obvious really. But really, the fit and finish and the quality of materials used here make this feel a cut above many other cars on the market. This is a very well sorted interior. In the rear cabin here, there are loads of positives and one slightly annoying negative. Let's start with the positives. Thanks to this optional sunroof, there's plenty of light in the back of this cabin despite having privacy glass all round. If there's a bit too much light for you, obviously you can close that up. You've also got sun blinds as well. Really luxuriously lined door cards here. It's lovely Alcantara material which actually follows through in all the rest of the cabin, including the headliner, which feels absolutely glorious. You've also got a cup holder in the door here, which seems like a stroke of genius. And you've got a vent in the pillar that follows through from the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. You've got the vent over here instead of down here. So instead of getting very cold or warm shins, it's actually blowing up towards you, which makes it a little bit more sense. You've got some nice door pockets down here, 2 USB-A's in the center console, and there's also a sizable cubby underneath those. And you can even adjust the passenger seat in this particular car from the rear seat. Ideal for those backseat drivers. In this centre here, you've got another couple of cup holders. Don't really know why they're in there, to be honest, because you've got a cup holder here, and if say each passenger has got a cup in here, someone sitting in the middle, well, they can't use these. So I'm not really sure why they're there, but it's very comfortable and very sturdy. And life at this stage, folks, is good. Loads of knee room, but here comes the downside. There's not enough room to put your feet. So the floor's obviously slightly higher because we've got batteries underneath here. So the floor's a bit higher than you would get in a standard internal combustion engine car. And it does cut into that foot room. I mean, I've got my feet jammed under this driver's seat at the moment, and it's not uncomfortable, but it does sort of let it down a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. With all this leg room and all this space and this nice big bright airy feeling, I just want a bit more space to put my feet. It's a very minor gripe, but one that's definitely worth noting. So when you get behind the wheel of the GV60, even though, let's not forget, this is a rip snorting beast of a car, you've got in excess of 400 horsepower on tap and a 0 to 62 time of just 4 seconds. You get into the thing and it's a place of serenity and calm. It's just a lovely thing to drive. It's so quiet, it's so effortless. Now, the interesting thing they've done in this car is not only have they increased the amount of sound deadening compared to the EV6 and the Ioniq 5, they've also put noise cancelling technology into the speakers. So that's coming in through the speakers to just cut out the exterior noise as much as possible. And that really does work very, very effectively. It's an incredibly quiet car to travel down the road in. And I'm going over speed bumps here, and potholes and manhole covers and everything else. And I don't know if you're picking it up in the video at all, but although you can feel the worst of the bumps, despite the fact that we're in a big heavy car, don't forget we've got all that battery weight, and the fact that we're sitting on some fairly large wheels with not the meatiest tyres in the world, the suspension's really nice. Very comfortable car to drive in. Now, often when you get a car with comfortable suspension, it's absolutely awful when you try and do any enthusiastic driving with it. If you get it down some B roads, if you take it out and on the twisties and give it some beans. That's not the case in this GV60. The chassis is very well sorted and the suspension just seems to sort of seamlessly adapt to whatever conditions you throw at it. It's a very impressive piece of kit. A lot of modern cars can feel slightly numb when it comes to the steering. They feel almost too light, and you don't get that sense that the steering wheel's necessarily completely connected to the wheels, because obviously quite often it's not. That's certainly not the case in the GV60. The steering's got a really nice heft to it. It almost feels like steering from a bygone era. It feels very well connected. You feel completely in tune with the road ahead, and yeah, it's, I don't know, the whole chassis and the drive of the car feels like reassuring, feels solidly put together, feels like a lot of thought's gone into the way this car drives, and that thought has paid off, folks. Now, at this stage in the review, you might think, oh, it's just a luxury car, but you are overlooking the fact that we do have in excess of 400 horsepower available to us here, and under my right thumb is the boost button. Now, it makes you feel a little bit trigger happy at times, because just one little stroke of that button makes all hell break loose, and it takes a lot of restraint to actually drive within the legal limits of the road when you've got that on tap. At all times in this video, by the way, I am driving within the legal limits of the road I'm on. But yeah, it is really quite tempting to press that and have all manner of fun. Likewise, if you go between the driving modes, you've got Eco, Comfort, Sport. The whole characteristic of the car changes, the throttle response changes. You feel everything sort of stiffen up. Even on this car, the seat bolsters even inflate to grip you in the seat more when you go into sport mode or into boost mode. It's incredibly impressive. It's incredibly well engineered, and really hats off to Genesis for taking the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 platform, which are already very well proven, and really putting their stamp on it. This car does it all, and it does it all in style. When you're looking at things that are not so good about this car, I mean, it just should have wireless CarPlay. I don't know why it hasn't. It seems like a bit of an oversight, and certainly the positioning of those USB sockets where you have to plug your phone in if you want to use CarPlay or anything just seems a little bit daft. Possibly feels like a bit of an afterthought almost, which in a car that's as well considered as this one is a little bit disappointing, but it's obviously not going to stop me or probably anyone else from actually buying the car. And of course, with this extra performance, you lose a tiny bit of range over some of the more sedate versions of the vehicle. And of course, you've also got a bit less boot space in the GV60 than you have in the Ioniq 5 or the EV6. But really, when you talk about luxury performance vehicles, regardless of the powertrain, this has to be part of the conversation because it's a fantastically good car. It really is a great car. If any of you are regular viewers of my YouTube channel, you'll know I'm a man who likes a bargain. I have to say, if I was going for one of these GV60s myself, I would spec it exactly like this one, and that's to the hilt. You know, this is a 67 grand car, as I've said a couple of times before probably. Sorry to repeat myself, but it's got all the options thrown at it. This one I'm sitting in now is over 75 grand. And I can tell you that it's the one you would want to go for. In this trim, with this level of spec, with this fantastic sound system, these amazingly comfortable seats, with this big sunroof, it's a car without compromise. And that means it needs a budget without compromise. Folks, if you've enjoyed this review, please give it a big thumbs up. Please leave a comment and please subscribe to the Men and Motors channel. Also, we've talked quite a lot in this video about the EV6 from Kia. Well, my good mate, Tom, has just done a review of it on Men and Motors. So click that and go and check it out right now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.